Welcome to Spinning Back Clique, where each week here at MMA Junkie, we take a spin through the biggest headlines in the sport. This week, we've got Mike Bond from up there in Toronto, Matthew Wells from the great state of Texas, and Nolan King was supposed to be with us today, but these crazy internet outages that we're suffering with, he has fallen victim to those. So I'm going to pull double duty. I'll just throw myself in the mix and do a little bit of it all. Let's jump into it, guys. It's not necessarily the most fun place to start, but Jon Jones remains a massive point of discussion for things happening outside of the cage. Now, Jones and his fiance are publicly expressing their commitment to each other, and the former champ says he's swearing off alcohol moving forward, but he still needs to face the legal repercussions from these alleged domestic violence acts in Las Vegas. Now, as the details are starting to become a little bit more clear, how does it make you feel about the future of Jon Jones in the UFC? Should there even be a future for Jon Jones in the UFC? It's a lot to take in, a lot to digest, but where are you standing right now? Let's put 4 minutes on the clock. Mike, you can get us started.
I mean, I don't feel good about it. How could you? Obviously it's very preliminary here. A lot of this stuff is alleged, but I feel like all the way around, this is being handled really poorly. The Instagram post from Jon Jones, both on his story right after the fact, working out, you got a friend in me. And then this other post, that he had the other day of him and his fiance just makes you feel really uncomfortable. And so it's really bizarre, the stuff that's coming on his side. And I think the UFC has kind of fumbled this as well. I mean, Dana White can go out there at the press conferences and answer your questions and say, we're going to let the police handle this, we'll follow their lead, et cetera, et cetera. But I would have liked to see more from the organization as a whole, like put a statement out or something to have good PR people over there. And this feels like, the correct way to handle it. Say the UFC is looking into the situation. We're going to follow, the police's lead and see what they're doing here. And, in the interim, we're not going to be booking Jon Jones for any fights. We're not going to consider any fights until this thing is wrapped up. But there's been none of that. Like, it just seems like do the bare minimum. So to me, this feels like we're probably going to end up, whatever happens here, maybe seeing him back in the UFC at whatever point. If he gets, thrown in jail for a couple of years or something crazy like that, then maybe the situation changes. But as of right now, sadly, I feel like this is kind of trending towards the things we see with Jon Jones. Usually there's a reason he's nicknamed Teflon John. And it seems like, he can somehow work his way around the stuff. And I hope that if all these things are true, these allegations, this is getting a much more serious look. But as of right now, I don't have a good feeling in my stomach about it.
Yeah, it's tough to say. As you said, it's still very preliminary. It is still technically alleged at this point. He is going to have his day in court. Matt, what about you? I mean, is it too easy to say? Do you wish the UFC was doing more right now? Are you encouraged that we're going to see more out of Jon? What do you think about the situation?
I really do wish that the UFC would do something more about this entire situation and similar situations with not only Jon Jones, but other fighters. Like, you have a PR department for a reason. Like, why are you not leaning on them in these situations like this? Like, you have to make some sort of statement, in my opinion, as an organization. Yeah, we don't condone these sorts of things. Yeah, it's all alleged. Yeah, you want to see how the legal process plays out and all that kind of thing. But it's still a good opportunity to put out a statement, say something about domestic violence, like we don't condone this sort of thing. And Jon is a guy who's had this history of multiple legal infractions. And, the domestic violence thing, with all of the evidence that's out there, the 911 call that has been making the rounds, like it's all bad. Nothing about this sounds good. And yeah, he can go on his social media and put out a video. We don't know when those videos were recorded. And I mean, they kind of looked a little awkward as well, because Jon himself has still not said a word publicly in a statement himself. Like, no apology to his fans, his family, nothing. It's all silence. And maybe that's a legal strategy. I don't know. But saying, I'm sorry about this situation, I don't see why that would be a bad thing. But in my opinion, the UFC has to do more in this situation, because as an organization, it just looks like you accept this sort of behavior. And yeah, Jon is one of the biggest stars, one of the best fighters ever. Still doesn't make him exempt from repercussions.
Yeah, it's a great point. I'll just add in, I think you hit the nail on the head with a couple of things, Matt. And let's just hear some direct address of it from the promotion. I mean, if we can't do it from Jon because it's a legal thing, I guess I get that. I understand it, but I would like to see the organization at least step up and address it, other than just being, answering questions in a scrum. Personally, obviously, we can't say anything about what him and his fiance do. That's for them to figure out, and they can do that behind the scenes. When I see people commenting on, how they look together or whatever, that's not really our place to decide. But professionally, I do wonder what the UFC can do. I mean, I see a lot of people calling for his release. I don't know. I mean, then it's not like that's going to stop him from fighting. He could go fight elsewhere. But listen, if there does seem to be some kind of a Ray Rice video here or something like that that surfaces, I think they're going to have their hand called, and they're not going to have much choice in the matter. So, lastly, I'll just say, maybe this could be a kickoff for some more mental health, kind of assistance, some more psychological assistance. Maybe I'm asking for too much, but maybe that's the next step that the organization can plan moving forward to help its athletes. I'd love to see that. Sorry, I ran a little bit long there. See, it is harder. I bust you guys' chops sometimes, and I'm the one running long now, guys. All right, listen, we did have some controversy at UFC Fight Night 193, and some of it happened before the card with Aspen Ladd missing weight for a planned clash with Macy Chiasson that ultimately led to the bout being scrapped. Now, Ladd has owned up to the miss, but there's been some fallout moving forward with some bickering between her team and former UFC champ Miesha Tate. That's been all in the news. It's kind of turned into a big deal. So what do you guys think here? What does the UFC need to do with Ladd moving forward? Let's put 4 minutes on the clock. Matt, you get it started.
Well, whenever people miss weight, we always hear like, hey, we're going to get this person into PI and we're going to monitor them real closely. Like, I need to hear that from with Aspen Ladd in this situation. Maybe they've gone that route before. Well, they need to do it again or something. It's unfortunate. Like, personally, I've never been a big fan of weight cutting in general. But again, I've always also said, if you sign the contract to make that weight, you need to do it, and you need to do it in the most healthy way possible. Obviously, Aspen is not doing that right now, and she's got a history of this sort of thing. So I would like to see something change, and it needs to change immediately. Whether she gets, special treatment or special attention with the UFC PI and nutritionist, that sort of thing, let's go that route. If not, move up a weight class, go up to 145. Look, there's not exactly a long line at 145 if you're trying to get into a title shot, if that's your ultimate goal in the UFC. But I don't know how she feels at fighting at that weight. Maybe she's uncomfortable fighting at that weight, but hey, you're not making 135. So some things have to change, and let's get this fixed before it becomes a more serious problem to where you're not only affecting yourself and your body, but your opponents who are missing out on paychecks by missing fights.
Yeah, there's so many things in there to take out of it, right? It's not just missing weight, right? It's not just bouts being canceled. That's a big deal, right? But there are a lot of, health implications in there, as you said. I mean, what she's doing to her body, that's costing her over time. And as you said, potentially costing opponents paychecks as well. I mean, we saw it here this past weekend. So, Mike, how about you? I mean, do you see things that need to be done? Obviously, more PI involvement sounds like a great idea. What do you think the plan needs to be?
Yeah, that's all great. I mean, what are we doing here, honestly? Like, there is a 145 division right there where it is going to be just as easy or much easier for you to get a title shot against the same champion who's at 135. Matt makes great points there. Maybe she's not the most comfortable. We hear these from fighters. They like to cut some weight. They like to come in, as physically, strong through a hard camp, get their weight low. It makes them feel better on the night of the fight to some degree, even if they're cutting an extreme amount of weight. But in Aspen Ladd's scenario, I mean, we've seen this multiple times on the scale with her. She's trembling up there. Like, I don't want to see this again. And there's a division right there. You can win one fight and be fighting for a title. So, like, why are you putting yourself through all this agony? And she is seemingly cutting a lot of weight. I mean, so it's kind of made the Twitter rounds and the fallout of this. There's the documentation from the California State Athletic Commission before she fought Jermaine Durandamy. She rehydrated on the night of the fight to 159 pounds. That's more than Chris Cyborg weighed the last time she fought in California on fight night. She's fighting at 145, and she could even fight at 155. So, like, this is just ridiculous. I think Aspen Ladd needs to figure this out with her team. Just move up a division. If you, in the meantime, want to, do some things on the side and down the line, try cut down to 135 again and do that, so be it. But right now, I mean, this just makes no sense to me. The clear option of moving up is right there, and anything other than that, I find ridiculous going forward.
I gotta agree with you, if I'm being honest with you, because listen, I mean, for a number of reasons. First of all, as you said, it's been very unhealthy. We've seen, this is not the first time. Were it the first time, we might even still say that was scary. I don't want to see that again, but it's not the first time we've seen it. And I'm not saying that to pick on her. I'm just saying that we've seen this multiple times. And as you said, it's clearly unhealthy. I don't want to see that again. But ultimately, what it really boils down to is what you guys both hit on. The division is right there. There's less people on the route to the top. And as you said, Matt, it's the same fighter. I mean, the goal is still the same, to beat Amanda Nunes. Is anybody going to take less away? If Aspen Ladd were to move up to 145 and beat Amanda Nunes to become the featherweight champion of the world, are any of us going to step back and say, well, yeah, but you didn't do it at 35, so that doesn't really count? No, you still beat Amanda Nunes. You still beat the GOAT, and you still got a UFC title around your waist. So I think this is such a unique situation in that you're not asking her to do anything differently. You're literally setting up the exact same scenario, except in a more healthy way. So please, Aspen Ladd, it's not to pick on you. Listen, move up a weight class and do it at 145. You guys, speaking of the men's bantamweight division, it's one of the deepest in the company, but it's also providing with some controversy in the UFC as of late. Now, Aljamain Sterling was announced to compete at UFC 267 before we found out that he wasn't even medically cleared to compete. Now we're doing an interim title, Petr Yan and Cory Sandhagen, who are amazing fighters, but they're both coming off losses, which is a bit of a unique scenario for a championship fight. So what do you think, guys? Was there a better way to handle things here? Or is the UFC kind of just simply doing the best it can, given the circumstances that it was dealt? Let's put 4 minutes on the clock. Mike, get us started.
Some of it's self-inflicted. Some of it's doing the best they can. If you could go back in time, I think pressuring Aljamain Sterling into this date, obviously not the right call. You could have done an interim title fight with Petr Yan and whoever fighter in July and August and September, and then book the winner of that to fight Aljamain Sterling in December, January, when he's 100%. Like, that should have been the course of action, but they wanted to do this rematch. The Aljo kind of jumped the gun in accepting it. All that stuff wasn't medically cleared. You laid it out well there. So that's where the big fumble happened off the beginning. The fallout on the other side, they're just doing the best they can, I guess. I mean, for the people out there that keep commenting on all the posts, why isn't it TJ Dillashaw? Why isn't it Rob Font? They went to both of those fighters. TJ Dillashaw just had surgery. He can't make that October 30th date. Rob Font dealing with some injuries of his own. That's why he's not fighting Jose Aldo till December. So, like, it just didn't work out timing-wise. And obviously, Cory Sandhagen's right there. It's a weird fight, the first title fight in UFC history where both guys are coming off a loss. But, of course, there's a lot of feelings about how Petr Yan and Aljamain Sterling ended. A lot of people still feel he's the real champion. And a lot of people also thought Cory Sandhagen beat TJ Dillashaw. So it's a great fight on paper. I mean, this is going to be absolutely insane. Who doesn't want to watch this? Just going to be handled way, way better.
That's kind of the interesting part of it, right? Is like when you look at the fight itself, like if it was just a fight happening, we'd be like, heck yeah, sign me up for that one. Stylistically, it's going to be amazing. But because of the stakes of it, it seems like everybody is really critical. And of course, I mean, if there's ever a chance to fire a shot at Aljamain Sterling, people are going to do it, right? So what do you think, Matt? Was there a better way to handle this? Or is this just kind of what we have to deal with right now?
No, I think it's, like Mike said, it's making the best out of a bad situation all around. I mean, Aljo had a surgery in April, and we're expecting him to be ready for a title fight already. It was kind of a stretch to begin with, but I mean, I get it. He's a competitive guy. He wanted to go out there and silence the haters, but unfortunately his body wasn't cooperating with what he wanted to do. So here we are with this strange matchup that ironically is just fantastic in a way, despite the fact that Mike said they're both coming off losses. Yan got himself disqualified. He was looking fantastic. And Cory Sandhagen, I mean, is just an all-around beast as well. And a lot of people thought he won that fight against Dillashaw. So both guys aren't exactly coming off the worst of losses in any way, shape, or form. But it makes for a fantastic fight, and it makes for a fantastic storyline if Sandhagen goes out there and wins because, hey, he's got the interim title, and now he gets to run it back with the guy who choked him out quickly in the first round. So a lot of intriguing storylines that can unfold here. I think that the UFC really just did the absolute best with what they could in this situation rather than waiting and absolutely doing nothing. I like the fact that they're implementing an interim title here. Usually I don't like interim title fights, but in this case, it makes sense. And like I said, there's a lot of different ways that this fight can play out and going into that unification bout. It's all interesting to me.
Yeah, there's so many good fights to make in the division, and we're going to get them, even if we don't like necessarily the scenario right now. I mean, you guys touched on it. I mean, probably shouldn't have announced Aljamain Sterling before he's medically cleared to fight, but I do get it, right? The UFC's got a plan. They've got to announce cards. They've got to sell tickets. They've got to promote. They've got commercials to make. They've got all those things to do. So in some ways, I understand, but it would probably be a more prudent decision to just not announce the fight. Say, hey, we've got more coming, and make sure the guy is medically clear first. The other thing, too, is, and it sounds like we say this in a lot of scenarios, I just wish the UFC was more transparent about it. I mean, Mike, you laid it out pretty clearly about why this really is kind of where, hey, they went to these other options. All these things that you said would be better, they tried that, and they couldn't do it. And I know UFC President Dana White has thick skin and literally just doesn't care what people say, but it would be so much better, I think, if you came out and said, here was the scenario. We understand you fans. This was the fight we would have liked to make, not available. This is the fight we would have liked to make, not available. So we went with this one. I can see on the backside of that how it may make it sound like, oh, so this is your fourth option and you want me to pay $50 for it. But I don't know. Sometimes I just wish clarity was there and it was just honesty. And I think people would buy into that a little bit easier. We'll see how. I don't think that'll ever happen, but It's worth a shot anyway. Guys, this weekend, Mackenzie Dern returns to action in the main event of UFC Fight Night 194. Now, her career has been incredibly interesting to this point. She seems to be one of the most polarizing figure in women's MMA. But right now, she's on a 4-fight winning streak. She currently sits at number 5 in the latest MMA Junkie strawweight ranking. So she's moving up there. And if she beats Marina Rodriguez, who's number 6, can we legitimately say finally that Mackenzie Dern is a UFC title contender? What do you see as her ceiling in her career in the division at this point? Let's put 4 minutes on the clock. Matt, get us started.
I think her ceiling is the title, or at least the title fight. She's an amazing competitor, man. And I know she gets a lot of hate on social media because of her, her accent and the way it seems to change from interview to interview. But listen, that has nothing to do with her fighting ability inside the cage. She's an amazing grappler. We all know that. She's aggressive. And I think that's the thing that really sets her apart from some of the other competitors in the division. She goes out there and gets after it. And yeah, her striking's not the best, which would make for intriguing options, when you consider the champ, Rose Namajunas, right? But the grappling aspect makes it so intriguing. And I think she likes to get in there and mix it up so much that she can go ahead and get that fight to the ground if she really wanted to. But that's where I think her ceiling is. I'm not necessarily saying that she would win that fight, but it makes for an intriguing matchup because of how good she is in this one particular aspect of fighting. I love her game, and I love how she approaches the fights, every fight that she's been in. And you can't really say that she's been in multiple boring fights by any means. I mean, on this 4-fight win streak, 3 of them are first round finishes. So I don't really understand the hate for her outside of just the silliness that, people like to pick apart her accent. It's just silly to me. But listen, she's a fantastic fighter, and we will see how she does in this fight against Rodriguez. If she goes out there and gets the first round finish against her, yeah, look, she's on that short list for sure. So at definitely top of the division title fight is her ceiling for me.
It is comical how this accent criticism just never goes away, man. It's one of the sillier storylines in the entire sport. I'm like you, Matt. When I'm evaluating talent, a lot of times I think it's hard to say that's a definite future champion, but you can look at somebody and say that's a definite future title contender. And then, of course, it just depends on the matchup they get when they get there. But I like what you're saying in terms of where she can be, because I tend to agree with that. Mike, how about you? I know I tipped my hand a little bit there, but where do you think her ceiling lies? And is this a big moment for her this weekend?
Yeah, of course. Anytime you get your first UFC main event, it's huge. I've been high on Mackenzie Dern for a long time. She's a true specialist, but her hands and her striking coming a long way now that she's working with Jason Perillo down there in Southern California. So, yeah, I think she's just improving at the rate she needs to. She has good people around her, and I think her ceiling is, that belt or that title fight as well. It's just a question of how quickly she gets there, what kind of performances she puts on, but obviously a huge spot for her here. I think either, Zhang Weili or Rose Namajunas would be fascinating fights for Mackenzie Dern. I think she has a good style to go in there and give them something really tricky. The only thing that keeps coming to my mind when we're talking about her as a title contender is I want to shed a tear for Carla Esparza, because if Mackenzie Dern goes out there and does something spectacular, I feel bad for Carla Esparza because she's probably getting skipped again.
I was wondering if we were going to get that in. That is tough. I'm thinking the same thing for Carla Esparza. I mean, she certainly deserves to be in it. Look, that would be an intriguing matchup as well. I mean, you could put that as a number 1 contender fight, but I feel like Carla Esparza at this point has kind of earned herself a title shot. She's having to wait right now. Would you feel a little guilty making her fight one more time against the up-and-coming contender where you're like, hey, I was already there. What I got to prove myself again? So, listen, I agree with both of you. The accent, the criticism of her accent is just ridiculous. Let that go. It's silly that we're saying about that. She definitely belongs to the top. She keeps looking better and better. Looked absolutely phenomenal last time out. And as you guys said, I mean, her grappling is so good. I mean, it really is, probably the best in the division, maybe among the best in all of women's MMA. I mean, she's that good on the ground. She's got that kind of pedigree. And when you start with a base skill that great, if you can just round out the rest of it, which it does seem like she's trying to do at this point. She seems to have, the weight thing on point. She seems to have the comfortability on the feet and point. To me, she looks like a bona fide title contender. As you said, though, Mike, the path there is a little bit interesting right now. The rematch that they redid at the top, it kind of spoiled things around a little bit. You still got Joanna and Jacek saying that she deserves some big fights out there as well. So we'll see how it all plays out. But I agree. Big weekend for Mackenzie Dern. Guys, lastly, here's how we're going to wrap it up. We're going to play a little game here. One topic each. You guys weigh in on the topic presented to you, and you let me know, is it foolish or is it fantastic? We'll put 4 minutes on the clock. I'll start with you, Mike. Matt, you'll get a different topic. I'll have a third topic. Mike, here's yours. Bellator should make all main events 5 rounds moving forward.
Yes, fantastic. I mean, dude, how have they not done this already? It's just, and it's been highlighted, obviously, their past 2 events, the Yoel Romero versus Phil Davis fight, not the greatest fight in the world, and neither was the Douglas Lima versus Michael Venom Page rematch, but they were getting intriguing. Like, they were at that point where we hit the 3rd round. It felt like things were really starting to warm up and being like, man, I wish we had 2 more rounds where we could maybe get a very definitive winner, so we're not getting split decisions or getting these, razor thin fights. It just feels like if you let these things breathe a little more, they would have had either a finish or a more definitive decision. So yeah, I mean, do I want to sit here and make a blanket statement saying every single Bellator main event needs to be 5 rounds? Do I need to see Czech Congo versus Sergey Karakonov scheduled for 5 rounds? Probably not. But like a lot of these other ones featuring these top-ranked guys, fights that are really of true significance for Bellator, yeah, they need to go in and do that because it's what we're seeing out of high-level fights. Maybe they're not doing it because it costs them a little extra cheddar out of the pocket to be paying for these guys for 10 more minutes. The UFC does give a bonus for 25-minute fights on their end. So maybe there's just some behind-the-scenes stuff that's stopping them from doing it. But to me, on the surface, there's no reason to not do it. It's going to better your product and give us more to talk about and better fights.
They can just invoke the Diaz clause, right? Like, we're not going to do it for every main event, but we'll pick and choose the ones that we want to do, and we'll invoke the Diaz clause, and we'll make it 5 rounds. All right, Matt, here's your topic. Dan Hooker takes on Islam Makhachev on 4 weeks' notice. Is the Hangman foolish, or is he fantastic?
Fantastic. I'll tell you what, if you want people to forget about the losses to Dustin Poirier and Michael Chandler, you go out there and get a short notice win over Islam Makhachev. I love that he stepped up for this fight, even though initially he said he didn't want to. But given his situation with travel and, COVID and restrictions and visas and everything like that going on, why not? Why not take advantage of it if it's available to you? Like I said, if you go out there and put 2 wins together in a row against Nasrat Haqparast and Islam Makhachev, people are going to start talking about you in that title picture once again very quickly. So I love that he stepped up. No complaints from me. It is very risky, but at the same time, he's got nothing to lose, because if he does go out there and lose to Islam Makhachev, well, Makhachev's that fantastic grappler. Oh, he's the next champion. Oh, he took it on short notice. So really, he's got nothing to lose here and a whole lot to gain. So good on him. Fantastic.
Yeah, I can't see any way that Dan Hooker doesn't gain even more fans than he already has after, doing this, whether he wins or not. He's going to put on a fight going out there. It's a tough stylistic matchup, no question about it, but I respect the heck out of him for doing it. So I completely agree with you there. All right, here's my topic. And I'm going to point out that I'll let Mike Bond pick the topic here. And here's what he said. Mike laid this one out for me. Tyron Woodley got the Jake Paul tattoo, hoping for a rematch. Is it foolish or is it fantastic? I'll tell you what. Can it be both? Like, on the one hand, I think it was foolish to make the bet. I mean, I like a little side action on a fight, but to put another man's name on your body and say that I love this man, I got to agree, that's a little bit crazy. That was foolish in itself. But you know what? I kind of say fantastic for living up to your word. I mean, you made that agreement. We all saw it on stage. You said you were going to do it. You got to kind of deliver on it. Now, I don't know if we've actually figured out if there was any pen in there. It's all tattoo, or maybe it was some henna ink. I'm not really sure about that. I guess we'll see how that plays out over time. I respect him for doing it. I actually do respect Tyron Woodley for following through on the agreement. I will say this, though. Chasing that rematch as a reason to do it, I don't know, man. I don't think it's necessarily a great look. You had your opportunity. You didn't pull the trigger. And I know it's frustrating, but you can't blame that on anybody else. And so, if Jake Paul is willing to give you a rematch, fine. But to demand that he does so, I don't think you're really in a position to do that. And let me, for the record, say, I think Tyron Woodley would do better in a second matchup. But you know what? I think Jake Paul knows that too. And that's exactly why he's not going to give him a second matchup. So give me a little bit of both. I think it was foolish to start with. I think it's fantastic that he lived up to his word. Maybe still foolish in the way he's chasing the rematch, but can't blame a man for trying to get paid. Well, guys, I know it's a little bit different this week, but I think we pulled through here. Hopefully Nolan King's internet comes back soon. We got some UFC action this weekend. There's always plenty of things happening in the sport of MMA, and we'll talk about it all next week on Spin.